The morning my husband packed me a lunch, I should have known something was wrong. He never packed me lunch. Not once in 11 years of marriage. Not when I had my wisdom teeth out and couldn't chew anything harder than yogurt. Not when I was recovering from the C-section with our son and could barely get out of bed. Not even on our anniversary when he claimed he had a romantic gesture planned that somehow never materialized. So when I came downstairs that Tuesday morning in October and found a bento-style container sitting on the kitchen counter with a yellow sticky note pressed on top. "For you, my love. Eat every bite." I stood there for a moment just staring at it. "I made you lunch," my husband called from the hallway, already in his coat, already half out the door. "Grilled chicken and that quinoa salad you like." He said it over his shoulder. He didn't turn around. "That's sweet," I said. The door clicked shut behind him. I picked up the container. It was heavier than I expected. The food inside smelled perfectly fine through the vented lid. Lemon and herbs and something warm. I set it in my work bag and told myself I was being paranoid. He was trying. Maybe we were finally turning a corner. Maybe the couples counselor sessions were working after all. I was wrong about almost everything that morning. But I was not wrong about one thing. Something was very, very off. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without the full picture. My name is Nora, and at the time of everything I'm about to tell you, I was 41 years old, working as a senior compliance officer at a mid-sized financial firm in downtown Toronto. My husband, I'll call him my husband throughout this, because that's what he was and what I'm still legally untangling, had been with me since I was 29. We met at a friend's dinner party in the Annex neighborhood, bonded over a mutual dislike of the host's overcooked risotto, and were married 18 months later at a small ceremony in the Niagara region. For a long time we were happy. Or I was happy. I've spent a lot of time since then trying to figure out if he ever was. He worked in commercial real estate. Good money, irregular hours, lots of client dinners that I stopped being invited to after our son was born. I told myself that was normal. A lot of things I told myself were normal. The cracks started showing about 3 years before the lunch. Small things at first. He started being protective of his phone in a way he hadn't been before. Tilting the screen away when I walked past, stepping out of the room to take calls. He started coming home later on Thursdays specifically. Always Thursdays. I noticed but I didn't say anything, because I think some part of me already knew and wasn't ready to know it out loud. Then came the money. My mother passed away the spring before all of this happened. She'd been sick for 2 years, ovarian cancer, and she died in April at the palliative care unit at Sunnybrook. I was with her. My husband was not. He said he had an unavoidable client meeting. I didn't fight him on it. I was too tired and too sad and too focused on holding my mother's hand. What my mother left me was not a fortune, but it was meaningful. A paid-off house in Scarborough that she'd owned for 30 years, some RRSPs, and a life insurance policy that paid out just over $400,000. My mother had been careful all her life. She'd immigrated from the Philippines in her late 20s, worked as a nurse for decades, saved every dollar she could. That money was her life's work. She left it to me. Within 2 months of her death, my husband began making suggestions. First, it was the house. "We should sell it," he said, and use the equity to invest in a commercial property development he was involved with. "Better returns than sitting on a residential asset in a stagnating market," he said. He used words like leverage and liquidity, an opportunity window until my eyes glazed over and I signed things I didn't fully understand. Then it was the insurance payout. A private TFSA strategy, he said. A financial advisor he knew, a friend, very reputable, could help us maximize it. I'd never meet this advisor. It would all be handled through my husband. I transferred the money. I don't know exactly when I began to understand what was actually happening, but I think it was a Sunday afternoon in September when I was looking for the car insurance renewal documents in his home office and found a folder I wasn't supposed to find. Inside were 2 sets of financial statements, one in my name, one in a name I didn't recognize, but attached to accounts I'd never opened, in amounts that were very familiar, all of it, sitting in accounts I had no access to. There was also a printed email dated 3 weeks prior. I won't give her name. But the email began, "Once it's done, we can finally leave. We've waited long enough." I sat on the floor of his office for a long time. Then I got up, put everything back exactly as I found it, and went downstairs to start dinner like nothing had happened. I had a plan by the time I went to bed that night. Or the beginning of one. I called my cousin the next morning from the parking garage at work, where I knew there were no cameras near my spot on P3. My cousin is a paralegal at a family law firm in Mississauga, and she is the sharpest person I know. I told her everything, the folder, the accounts, the email, the transfers. She was quiet for a long moment. "Nora," she said, "don't move anything. Don't confront him. Don't let him know you know. I know, I said. I'm going to call someone, she said. A forensic accountant. This is financial abuse. This is potentially fraud. You need documentation before you do anything else. I spent the next 6 weeks acting like my marriage was fine. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I sat across from him at dinner and asked about his day. I laughed at things he said. I lay next to him in bed at night and stared at the ceiling and thought about my mother's hands. How careful they were. How strong, how she'd worked 30 years to give me something safe. The forensic accountant my cousin connected me with, a quiet, meticulous woman named Dr. Brennan, found everything within 3 weeks. The shell account structure, the fraudulent power of attorney he'd had me sign during my mother's illness, when I was distracted and exhausted and trusting. The transfers, the timeline. She also found something else. A life insurance policy on me that my husband had taken out 14 months earlier. A policy I had never been told about, worth $650,000. I stared at her across her desk in her Yonge Street office and felt something cold settle into my chest. Who is the beneficiary? I asked. She slid the document across the desk without a word. It wasn't my son's name. It wasn't my husband's name. It was the name from the email. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. I lay in our bed, the bed we'd bought together at a store on the Queensway, the one with the wooden headboard I'd always liked. And I thought about what a life insurance policy meant. I thought about what it meant that my husband had taken one out on me without my knowledge and named someone else as the beneficiary. I thought about it until it made a terrible kind of sense. I went to the police the following week. My cousin came with me. We brought Dr. Brennan's full report, the folder I'd photographed page by page on my phone the Sunday I found it, and the insurance documents. The officer I spoke to, a detective in the financial crimes unit, was calm and professional and asked very precise questions. At the end of our meeting, she said they would open an investigation. She asked me not to confront my husband and not to change my routines. Act normal, she said. I've been doing that for 6 weeks, I told her. She almost smiled. Then you're already good at it. The lunch happened 4 days after that meeting. I've thought about the timing so many times. 4 days. I don't know if something spooked him, if he felt the investigation closing in, if someone tipped him off. I don't know if he'd been planning it for longer, and it was simply coincidence. What I know is that on a Tuesday morning in October, my husband made me a lunch he'd never made me in 11 years of marriage. Put a yellow sticky note on top that said, "For you, my love." Eat every bite, and left before I could ask him any questions. What I didn't know, what I only found out later, was that I wasn't supposed to receive that lunch. Our regular grocery and prepared food deliveries went through an app. One of those services that lets you order from local restaurants and specialty shops. The chicken and quinoa had been ordered the night before from a place near our house. My husband had scheduled a pickup time and put our home address as the delivery destination. But here is the thing about our home address. We had moved 8 months earlier when we relocated from our rental in East York to a house we'd bought in Leaside. The new address was in the app. The old address was still saved as a secondary location, his old favorite. The one he used to order late-night food when he worked from home before the move. And the old East York address was not our old apartment. It was a condo building on Millwood Road. It was where she lived. The delivery driver, a young man doing a weekend shift to supplement his income, he told the police later, had 2 pickups that morning and got confused between the addresses. The lunch meant for me was delivered to the condo on Millwood Road. The woman at that address accepted it without question. The sticky note said, "For you, my love." She probably thought it was sweet. 37 minutes later, my husband's phone rang. I was in a meeting at work. He was in his office downtown. The call came from her neighbor, who had let herself in with a spare key when she couldn't get an answer at the door. She was on the kitchen floor. I didn't find out about any of this in real time. I was at my desk, reviewing a compliance audit report at 11:40 in the morning when my husband called me. For the first time in weeks without me initiating. And said something had happened. He needed to come home. He didn't explain anything. He just said something happened in a voice I'd never heard from him before. He was at the house when I got there. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his coat still on, staring at nothing. "What's going on?" I asked. He looked at me like he was calculating something. "There's been an accident," he said. "A woman I know. She had some kind of reaction to food. She's in hospital." He was watching me carefully as he said it. I understood then that he was looking for something on my face. Some sign of what I knew, what I'd done, what I suspected. I kept my expression still. "That's terrible," I said. "Do you want tea?" He blinked. "Sure," he said. "Yes." I put the kettle on and thought about my mother. The detective called me been informed. The hospital had flagged it. The woman's toxicology screen had come back with results that required a police response. She asked me where my lunch was. I went to my work bag. I'd never eaten it. I'd had a lunch meeting at the office and left it in my bag, still sealed. I told her. She said, "Don't touch it. We're sending someone." The container was collected within the hour. The analysis took 4 days. I won't go into the specifics of what they found. That's part of the ongoing court record. But I will tell you that it was not a natural contaminant. It was not a food safety issue. It was something deliberate. The yellow sticky note was still stuck to the lid. "For you, my love. Eat every bite." The detective told me later that note was the piece of evidence my husband's defense attorney spent the most time trying to explain away. He had written it himself, his handwriting, pressed it to the lid of a container intended for me. And when the delivery driver mixed up the addresses, that note traveled with the food to Millwood Road, to the woman who thought it was a loving gesture from the man she'd been seeing for 4 years. She survived. It took 11 days in hospital and longer to recover fully, but she survived. She is, by all accounts, not interested in pressing charges against my husband on behalf of herself. A complicated legal situation my cousin says she understands but cannot quite believe. My husband was arrested at our home on a Friday evening in November. My son was at my cousin's place. I was sitting in the living room when they knocked. I opened the door, 2 officers and the detective. My husband came down the stairs in his socks. "Tobias," the detective said, "we have a warrant for your arrest." He didn't look at me when they walked him out, not once. I stood in the doorway of the house I'd bought partly with my mother's money, and I watched the car pull away, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not relief, not anger, not satisfaction, just an enormous exhausted quiet. The financial fraud charges came first, then the charges related to the food. His lawyer argued a number of things: contamination, error, misunderstanding, motive issues. The forensic accountant's report dismantled the fraud defense piece by piece. The insurance policy with another woman named as beneficiary was difficult to explain. The handwritten note was impossible to explain. It took 14 months to get to trial. I won't walk you through all of it. What I'll tell you is that the RRSP accounts and the insurance payout my mother left me were recovered. Not all of it, but most. The Scarborough house had already been sold, and that was more complicated. But my lawyer is still working through it. The life insurance policy was voided. My son, who was 8 at the time of his father's arrest and is now 10, knows that his father did something very wrong and is being punished for it. We talk about it in age-appropriate terms. He's in therapy. He's doing okay. Some mornings he is more okay than others. I hold the harder mornings for him and try not to let him see how hard my own are. What I think about most, some nights, is the delivery driver, a young man doing his job, running 2 pickups in a Tuesday morning rush, grabbing the wrong container off the counter, and heading to the wrong address. He had no idea. He thought he was delivering lunch. He told the police he remembered the sticky note. He said he thought it seemed nice, that the person sending the food had taken the time to write something personal. He said it made him think about calling his own mother. I hope he did. Because here is the thing I keep coming back to. My husband is a careful man. He spent years moving money through accounts, structured carefully enough that it took a forensic specialist weeks to unravel it. He planned ahead. He minimized risk. He was strategic about almost everything. But he wrote that note by hand. He pressed it to the lid himself. He put his handwriting on the thing he intended to harm me with, and signed it with something he'd stopped meaning years ago. And when the address got mixed up, because sometimes the smallest, most ordinary mistakes change everything, that note went where it went, and said what it said, and became the thing that unraveled him. My mother used to say that the truth finds its way home eventually. She said it in Tagalog first, then translated it for me when I was small. I never fully understood what she meant when I was a child. I thought it sounded like something people said to comfort themselves. I understand it now. I still have the quinoa salad recipe, the one he claimed to have made. I found it printed from a website in his browser history during the investigation. He'd looked it up 2 days before. He'd never cooked quinoa in his life. He didn't know that I hated quinoa. I'd told him that years ago, at a dinner party, the kind of dinner party we used to go to together, when we were still people who did things together. He didn't remember. Or he didn't care. I'm not sure which one is sadder. My son asked me last week my favorite lunch was. We were in the kitchen on a Saturday, and he was at the counter in his socks with the fridge open, very seriously evaluating our options. "Soup," I said. "Tomato soup with a grilled cheese." He considered this. "That's a good one," he said. He made it himself mostly. I helped with the stove. We ate at the kitchen table by the window that looks out onto the backyard, the one with the maple tree that was just starting to turn orange again. It was the best lunch I'd had in years.